Welcome, everybody. Somehow you guys got here before I did. My name is Jerry, if you don't know me. And
you can change this so that the person that's speaking is what you see mostly. If you go up there. I don't get it to do anything.
There's nothing up there. Jennifer better hurry and get on. Should not.
She might be on. She might be up here.
Yeah.
Click over there and you can see other people.
welcome, everybody. As I said, I'm Jerry Mandel. I'm the operations manager for the Youth Symphony. It's nice to see so many people here already early. I'm a little nervous because we are limited to 100 people. I hope everyone gets in. So far, so good. We're at 36. Wow. I see Wirasu and Edicione. Hi, you guys. Mia is here all the way from Germany. Is that right?
Wonderful to see you.
Hello.
Only 4 to 5.
Oh, okay. I'll come in a little bit.
Sophie. What?
Gabrielle, hello, welcome. I see so many familiar faces here, and it's growing by the minute. That's fantastic. Well, last night I tuned into Mr. Berman, our music director, also runs a group in San Francisco called Ninth Planet, a new music group. And they did a performance last night, which was really wonderful. And I know if you're new to the youth orchestra, you're going to be impressed with all that we were able to do in a brand new way. And I know our orchestra members are going to be happy. I think they're hearing the final version of their two pieces for the first time tonight as well. "401. "70 people, wow." This is exciting to see so many people coming. Oh, and there's Mr. Berman. Yay. How can I find him?
Hello, good to see you all. Yeah, thank you all for joining us. It's just such a pleasure to be able to gather this way and to see your faces, those of you who are on camera. So thank you for being here and for taking the time to listen and take part with us. Well, I think the way this is going to unfold this evening is I'm going to play a combination of both the two pieces that we recorded. So that's the Great Gate of Kiev and also the Beethoven second movement of the Seventh Symphony. And then also mix in a bunch of the individual improvisational pieces that the students worked on throughout the quarter, which were an important part of our work and kind of part of the fun of what we're doing in this time of recording remotely. And then, you know, within that, I'll give some remarks. I welcome people commenting in the chat. And Jerry, you and I can kind of keep an eye on the chat together if questions come up during the course of the performance. And then afterwards, at the end, we can have a little quick Q&A for those of you who want to stick around for that. So I want to preface this by giving a little bit of a sort of primer about how we went about doing our recording and work this quarter. What we did were two things primarily. One was that we recorded the main repertoire pieces that I just mentioned, and the other with the improvisations. And all of this took place through, I mean, I think a few students had maybe other ways that they worked in this, but for the most part, it took part through an app called BandLab. And there's a thing called the digital audio workstation, which essentially replicates, putting it simply, replicates an engineer's kind of sound controls so that an individual can record themselves and control various aspects of their sound, and then can take that first recording and also do another track on top of it. And that's how the improvisations unfolded. The other way that this was helpful for us is that I could distribute recordings of the pieces that we were working on. And when I say recordings, I'm talking about Midi recordings, which essentially are just computer renditions of these orchestral pieces with a click track. So a metronome guiding the work, and then also the sort of synthesized sounds of the instruments that would be playing. So you're hearing the orchestral piece just in a very simplified form, and maybe I'll demonstrate that later. Simplified, by which I mean you're hearing, you know, synthesized versions of the instruments. So there isn't nuance and expression that comes from human playing, and yet there is a tone to play to that can guide our intonation. So individual players received these recordings with the click tracks for the repertoire. And we worked week by week, just talking about sections of the piece and how to play them. And some students played on camera just as a guide, as a way for me to coach them and thereby the rest of the players in how we wanted the sound of the various pieces to be as we worked through the sections of the piece. And so then the players week by week recorded segments of the piece, which then later I put together in my own digital audio workstation on my laptop computer. And then just to go to the improvisations, like I said before, it's possible for players to record themselves and then record another layer on top. So there were a couple ways that this could unfold. Sometimes I just invited people to open-endedly do any kind of improvisation they wanted with, let's say, just very general guidelines, like maybe make one track with long notes to create these kind of pedal pitches that you can play against to create the sense of a key or a mode. And then the second track could be something with shorter notes or kind of more articulation to provide contrast. But I also invited players to play pre-composed pieces that were, let's say, duets or trios. So individuals could record, you know, a violinist could record a violin trio, which is not something, obviously, one is able to do on one's own, is to play in 3 parts with oneself. So the players took advantage of all those possibilities. And there's one more thing I'll mention about that way of working in improvisation, and that is that BandLab, just like most audio workstations, allows players to loop themselves. So that means you can record a short excerpt that could be a bass line, for example, and play along with your set, and then loop that. So you have just something that could be, you know, it could, you could theoretically play Paco Belcannon and play the, you know, the bass line. Etc. So the second entrance of the voice would be, you know, the second time that you play. So it's really been wonderful to see what the players have done with this last quarter. And I think what I'll do is just start out by playing some of the pieces that players have nominated to have shared with you now. And so I'm going to, if you'll forgive me, a little bit of awkwardness throughout this meeting as I make some transitions on my computer. Okay. As I do this, I'm going to invite each player to give, you know, a short introduction about the piece that they're sharing. So the first one up is Alina's Improv. And Alina, can you hop on and tell us about it?
Okay, so I basically chose the theme from Harry Potter for Harry and Ginny, and I recorded one part of me plucking it, and a part of me just playing some simple quarter notes. So it's very simple overall, but yeah.
Great, thank you. Here we go. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Alina. And that's a perfect example of using two different kind of, you could say, textures to create a two-part piece. So with one part with the pizzicato, the plucked sound, and the other with the sustained sound with the bow. And then up next, Chloe Clark, can you join us? The title kind of says it all. It says inspired by Mandalorian theme, but maybe you want to introduce it for us.
Yeah. Basically, there's a new season of Mandalorian out, and it comes out every week. And in every episode, there's the Mandalorian theme, and it kind of changes each time. So I wanted to make my own version of it. It's pretty iconic.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, here it is. Yeah, bravo. Very cool. And it reminds me that a lot of the submissions that we had from the improvisation projects were multi-instrumental. So players that I had no idea also played piano, drums, various things. Hannah Kuo turned in something where she played like maybe 6 instruments, which was astounding. Yeah, so bravo, Chloe, beautiful. And maybe one more to finish off this first set. So this is Benjamin Goodwin, and this is Desperately Safe from Off. So Benjamin, could you introduce it for us, please?
So, well, there's not too much to say. This was a piece, or well, for something that I did last year. It was like an arrangement. So last year I had like a music project that I did, and I arranged a bunch of pieces from this one game Off. And so for one of the improvs, or for one of the like short pieces that I did, I just re-recorded one, and it also has some piano to it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Benjamin. Here we go. Beautiful. So lovely to hear. Yeah. It's super inspiring to hear these pieces written by our players. And players to you, I would say next quarter for improvisations, one thing to explore that I won't waste time talking about it much here, but I'll just say all of these can be enhanced even if you're just using BandLab. I mean, if you're using GarageBand or Logic or any number of other ways of working, there are different ways to do this, but by adding reverberation, and that's pretty easy to do in BandLab, and we can explore that next quarter. It simply gives this idea of being in a space. I mean, all of us are recording these days in our bedrooms, right? So, next to your bed in a dry space, and that's what we need for our orchestral recordings, in fact, because reverberation can be confusing when we try to put recordings together. But that's the next step for us as we think about these improvs. But yeah, for the three of you, thank you for sharing. Bravo. So we'll turn now to the first of our orchestral pieces. And as we do that, I'll just say a few words about this. So this is The Great Gate of Kiev from, of course, the Mussorgsky piece, Pictures in an Exhibition, which was then famously scored for orchestra by Ravel. So Mussorgsky wrote a piano piece, this kind of major piano piece that he wrote in various movements. And the idea of the piece was that we're walking through an exhibition of paintings by a friend of Mussorgsky's, an actual person who wrote Victor, oh my goodness, now I'm going to forget his last name, but we'll call him Victor. He wrote, he painted much throughout his life. He was also an engineer of sorts, an architect of sorts. And so he created all these images that Mussorgsky, after his friend's passing, was very inspired by and wrote the piece as a dedication to his friend. And the last movement is The Great Gate of Kiev. So there actually is a gate of Kiev. It is not the one that Mussorgsky's friend designed. He actually had created a different image of what a great gate of Kiev, this sort of symbolic image of the power of the city, would look like. But Mussorgsky very fittingly wrote a grandiose, majestic movement to depict this this gate. And so we're playing this in arrangement, and I'll take a second to talk about something on my end, which is that I'm accustomed to being the conductor, and that's the thing that I've trained to do and really my expertise. And so putting together these recordings was an all new adventure for me. I had never attempted to do it in my life before 3.5 months ago, or whatever it was, when this set started and also UCSC began. So I'm an amateur, and I promise you, something that I think will be satisfying enough to feel how we sound together. But I think that if I showed up with my work at Skywalker Ranch and Studios, I probably would not be offered an internship. So I just want to give that little apologia before we get started. Something that I've reflected on these last months, and particularly these last few weeks, as I've very intensively been working on these recordings, is what's of great benefit coming out of this set and the things that we miss from performing together. So the thing that I think has been the most amazing for me, and I hope for you players as well, is that this is the first time really in our work, and maybe in your lives, I don't really know, that you've recorded yourselves and heard your feedback immediately. You know exactly what you sound like with the objectivity of listening afterwards. And so because there's this recording, this MIDI recording that I mentioned, players can actually hear exactly how their sound fits into the recording that was provided. That's usually my role, is to listen, try to take in what's happening in various sections, give advice or feedback to sections and individuals. But with this, never in my career as a conductor before, and certainly not with the Youth Symphony, have I heard everyone's recording individually. And so it's almost like you don't hear from me necessarily, but it's like I'm able to give everyone kind of a coaching, as it were. And so what it points out to me, one takeaway from me, is the incredible impossibility and miracle of performing together in rhythm. What I mean by that is, when we are together rehearsing in the same space and performing in the same space, we play in time together, and we never really think about it much. When we're apart and we have to play something, let's say in the Beethoven movement, where the first violins or second violins play this figure. Sorry. So it just needs to be exactly in the 16th note beat of this sort of steady, slower, steady piece. And players play almost immaculately well, and yet by not being side by side, it's much harder to line up exactly. I won't go on too much longer before I play this, but there's a novel by a writer called Frank Conroy, and I think it's one of the more interesting novels that I've ever read about musicians, and it depicts a child prodigy pianist in the 1950s, I think it is. So I recommend it. It's not, quite, Pulitzer winning literature, but it's better than just summer reading. And I think he did a really good job of depicting what it is to be a musician, especially as a child, figuring out how you relate to sounds. There's a scene in it where this child prodigy is playing his first concert as a concerto. So as a pianist, you don't necessarily play a lot of chamber music when you're young. And it can be that your very first solo gig is as a soloist, as a concerto soloist. And so at the first rehearsal, things don't go perfectly. And he speaks up during the rehearsal and says, it's not really together. What's going on? Which, as an orchestra member or as a conductor, would feel incredibly, probably insulting or conceited for somebody to say that. And yet this player had no experience and just assumed it would be perfect right away. And the conductor in this novel says to this person, kind of as an aside, do you know what? It's a miracle that anyone can ever play together at the same time. How is it possible that everyone can be playing at the same time? It just isn't scientifically possible, and yet it will happen. Just trust it will happen. So all of this is my lead into, as we listen to this together, you'll hear that it doesn't match the way we usually play together as an ensemble when we're seated side by side. And that's just okay. I mean, I'm really proud of how every individual player played. I mean, having heard you all, you did a great job. There are these little nuances that when 6 players are playing the same part and not hearing one another, they're not going to sound together. There's one major problem, and it's my fault. And that is at the very end, there's a passage where the arranger chose to change something that was in the original piece where the brass are playing this fanfare. And without going too much into detail, I chose to have the brass only play one note. And it didn't work out very well with the way that our forces were aligned. So right at the very end, you'll hear something that seems like a little bit of a moment that we're not together and not understanding what to do. That's really my fault. And I think we can just hopefully have a laugh at it and enjoy the rest of the piece. So without further ado, here is The Great Gate. Give me 1 second to make a little adjustment on my computer here. I'm 90% sure that this will play without issue over our stream. If anyone doesn't hear it, please speak up. Here we are. Yeah, bravo to you all. Congratulations, everybody. Okay, let's turn back to a few more improvisations. Let me call that up again. And I know some people might have questions about the orchestral music as we listen to it, and feel free to drop them in the chat or just hold on to them for the end of the meeting. All right, so Adi, you're up next, and we have your piece called Naruto is Godly with 3 Ys. And could you tell us a little bit about it?
Hi. I made Naruto because I like the TV show and I thought that I should make a song about it. And yeah.
Best reason ever. All right, good. Let's listen to it. Yeah, bravo, Adi. Great job. Beautiful. And next up, Joshua. We have Joshua Hayashi Doyon and the Mozart Clarinet Duet. Joshua, you want to introduce it?
Sure. Well, my friend who's a trombone player and he's a kind of interesting artistic kind of guy, and he first introduced me to not the piece but to playing at the parking garage. And first we went all the way up to the UCSC's parking garage, all the way up the hill, and at night, and putting some places the Spotify and the car's audio, and then played to it. But anyhow, that's kind of how I was introduced to the playing in the garage. I kind of got into it, and then one day I went to the garage and decided to play the duet and record it. So that's where the recordings comes from, and hope you all enjoy.
All right, thank you, Joshua.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Tammy. Really, really wonderful, Joshua. Great. And for those of you who don't know, Joshua is a sax player who, until a couple of years ago, had not played clarinet at all. And just because of his desire to play in orchestra, he took up the instrument, and it was a transition. And Joshua, you're playing so gracefully now. It really, it's beautiful to hear, and playing that delicately in the upper register. I mean, that's very high for clarinet. So that's well done. Bravo.
So much.
Yeah, of course. Okay, one more. And this is Hannah Kuo, who's just done a lot of amazing improv this quarter, and also introduced herself as a really excellent sound engineer. I didn't even know that was a skill Hannah had, but I think she could probably engineer circles around me. So Hannah, could you introduce your piece, please?
Yes, so my piece is called A Nostalgic Spin on the Windows XP Startup Sound, which I was just trying to think of common sounds that we all recognize that I could kind of expand upon. So I used the BandLab MIDI function, and I connected it to my electric piano, and then I played it and added some effects.
Beautiful. And Hannah's a violinist in our orchestra, but this is a different side that you'll hear now. Bravo, very beautiful. And it's subtle too. I mean, I'm not even sure if I would catch the Windows XP reference. I mean, I've been a Mac user for a lot of years now, so it's not kind of in the forefront of my brain, but interesting inspiration. I mean, really, musical inspiration can come from any source, and that I find much more inspiring than the actual Brian. Is it Brian Eno, I think, who created that sound? Original. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the Beethoven now. And there'll be some time at the end I can ask some other students. These are the students who have kind of put their pieces forward to be shared. I might ask a few others if we have some time and still have interest in that. Otherwise, after I play the Beethoven, I'll open the floor for questions if you have them. So here's Beethoven Movement 2 from the 7th Symphony, one that is a well-beloved movement and within one of the most well-beloved symphonies of Beethoven's output. We don't have every instrument playing, so those of you who know the piece well will hear a few gaps, simply because we're not quite a full orchestra, but I think the soul of the piece is there. So I'll need just maybe 15 seconds here to do some switching over on my end on my computer. Okay, so it's all set, and here we are.
이게 유리신고 콜라
Bravo, everyone. Yeah, I really can't describe how difficult it is for individuals to sort of be able to create a sense of cohesion and to play in rhythm the way that the players did. So to all of you, congratulations. I mean, it really is a great accomplishment. It's going to sound different than what we do in the recital hall. And it's in some ways going to be less satisfying than the immediate satisfaction of playing together. And yet what you did, we created something special and you know, really, and I say the word surprisingly, not intending to be insulting, but I mean, really surprisingly good. Given that you're all sitting in your bedrooms, you know, playing for an audience of yourself and whoever's in the next room. So congratulations, and I hope you enjoyed hearing the fruits of your labors. There's probably more for me to try to work out to do with these recordings to fill them out and make them sound more balanced. This is just everything I could do to get it there for today. But I'll try to continue working on this. So we'll have them as an archive of what we did during this time. So a couple of things we could do now. It's 4:52. If with permission, I'd be happy to share a few more improvisations of the students, or I'm happy to answer questions or have, you know, open-ended questions posed to the players who are almost all here. So let me just open the floor. Your comments either in the chat or if you want to speak up, you're welcome. I've been talking a lot, so I'm trying to make some space for some other voices. Yeah, some people are asking for more improv. Thanks to those of you.
Can you hear us? Hear
I
me?
can, yes, yes.
Awesome. I just wanted to give a shout out to my daughter Mia, who is awake in the middle of the night in Germany right now. You guys did great. The oboe sound.
That's right. I saw Mia's name on the as one of our cubicles. Mia, bravo to you for your work, and thank you for joining us in the middle of the night. And also, Mia was one of the featured players in this last piece, which, you know, obviously the Beethoven movement we just heard featured a lot of the wind players, and so we heard solos from Amir Avital playing that beautiful clarinet solo. Mia played some of the solo oboe parts, and Sebastian, that little solo bassoon moment, da, dee, dee, da, 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 so beautiful. Yeah. I just got a direct message from one student saying, am I able to share anything about what next semester will look like? It'll overall be a similar format. I'm going to be kind of switching up a little bit of what we do to maybe think of more creative ways for us to use either improvisation or small group chamber music / small group improvisation. But one piece that I've pretty well settled on is the Brahms last movement of the First Symphony. It's in arrangement, so we're not going to try to play Brahms' original work, which is extremely weighty and difficult. But this is still a satisfying version of that piece. So Brahms' First Symphony, Movement 4. The rest of it I have yet to piece together. I'm sort of thinking about something lighter for another piece. So that's kind of the best I can do with that. Maybe just 5 or so minutes more of sharing improvisations, and then if other questions come in, I'm happy to answer. Let's see. I got permission from one person right before rehearsal, right before this meeting, to share his work. So maybe I'll share something by Hunter Bauman, who did some really interesting improvisations this quarter. If you just give me one moment here to find it. Hunter, I'll share one you did early in the quarter. I don't know if you know it by number. It's Improv number 2. It's in minor. And if you remember it and want to say something about it, please do.
He walked away so he wouldn't have to hear it.
Well, he did volunteer to have these be played, and I think
he's
it sounds
happy
beautiful.
to share. He just was.
Okay.
He wasn't.
Okay, fair enough. Am I still sharing? I am. Good. So here we go. Sorry, just a quick moment here. This should work now. Yeah. So just a simple modal improvisation. So one thing that we talked about with improvisation is that you can pick a scale or a mode and play really what we call modally, meaning that you can, if you stay within a single group of 7 scalar notes, or actually it can be a pentatonic scale, 5 notes, or it can be something that's not a traditional scale, but if you pick a sort of scalar frame of reference and stick to it, in a sense, there's no wrong note that you can play, only interesting harmonies that can develop as a result of playing within that mode. So you get, this was kind of the point of modal jazz back in the 60s, when players started to have chord structures last longer between changes, so players could really explore different timbres within one mode and think a little bit more about playing melodically, which is kind of what Hunter did there. Let's see. Min, are you on the call? Would you mind if I played a piece of yours? Maybe Min isn't here. Let me ask Xander, could I play one of your improvisations? Maybe Xander isn't on.
Yes, if you can hear me, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. So,
oh yeah, yeah.
I picked one out, Xander, but I don't know. It's. Let me just find it first, and then I'll see if you remember to introduce it specifically. It's just called Improv number 2. So I don't know if you recall that. It's from a while back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'll just play it. Gorgeous. Yeah, bravo. Really great work thinking harmonically, building closely voiced chords. So you had, in addition to sort of like a simple triads, you had whole steps happening within the chords. So we had these sort of stacked chords, something out of jazz or late 19th century or early 20th century music. Really beautiful to hear. Well, it's 5 o'clock, everybody, and maybe we'll wrap it up with that. But it's been such a pleasure to share this. And let me just check the chat in case there were any questions. Thank you for the kind words, folks, in the chat. Oh, Tammy Feinberg asks, I'm interested in hearing from the players about their experiences in remote rehearsals, like high points. I think low points would be welcome too, because it's all a learning process, and how it was to produce solo recordings. So if anyone wants to respond to that, we could take a second for that.
I think personally, I really enjoyed actually doing something that we kind of didn't have time for when we meet in person, which was talking about the history behind the music and talking about the composers and talking and listening to music together. Obviously, when we're doing in-person rehearsals, kind of just playing together takes up the whole time. And I mean, obviously, listening to music doesn't really replace being able to play together and make a sound as one symphony. But I think that was something that maybe even when we get to go back in person eventually, something we could incorporate, maybe have 1 or 2 rehearsals where we do listen to some music together, have like a musical show and tell. And then obviously a low point was not being able to play together, not being able to perform together like we normally do.
Yeah. Excellent points. I mean, it is a privilege to be able to listen to music together. I mean, it's fun, and we actually get to discuss things. I have to admit, you know, as a conductor, when we're in rehearsal, my focus is just go, 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 play, play, play. You know, as a conductor in instruction, you're taught to speak as little as possible and let your kind of gestures and the work do the work. Does that make sense? And let the work speak for itself, so that you just get as much possible as done in the 2 hours you're allotted for rehearsal. But it's also true that that means we're really focused on technique, you know, issues of things related to directly to the piece, as opposed to growing kind of laterally as musicians and listeners. I would say one thing that I miss the most from being in person is working on sound, because that's something we can do conceptually right now, but not really think about our sound that we're making together. And aside from the times that people play on camera, which is really great, we can't say, no, that wants more vibrato, that wants to be a warmer sound, this needs to be a more chiseled accent, something like that. We're just sort of giving out general ideas and hoping we all are on the same page. On the other hand, we get to do things that I mentioned earlier with hearing ourselves critically, working on rhythm. I mean, rhythm is sort of one of the biggest things we can take from this time, because we're working kind of more with a metronome.
Matt, and
Yes.
I'd like to add, I think the amazing thing about it is that we utilize the technology differently, because I think we get a lot better when we record ourselves and then listen back, and we get this sort of outside perspective instead of always being, you know, the instrument tucked right up next to us, and we only hear it a certain way when the instrument's this close. And I think by recording, we step away from the instrument, and therefore we hear it from a different perspective, allowing us to go, oh, I hear what I should be doing there. I think it'll be much nicer if I do that. And then we apply this. And I think that's the amazing thing about doing the recording. This sort of opens up a new window for us, so we can sort of see that we have another perspective. We can step away and listen to the recording and then improve very quickly because of the fact that we've stepped away from ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the same way that our friends can observe things about us that we don't necessarily know. Someone will say to you, oh, you're so outgoing. And you think to yourself, oh, no, I'm really a shy person. But then if a lot of your friends are telling you, you know, you're really fun to be around and outgoing, maybe your perception of yourself isn't exactly the same as you thought. It's the same with music. Just as Anthony says, you can have your violin right next to your ear all the time and not hear things that you hear simply by listening back to a recording. The same way if we see ourselves videotaped, our voices sound different, or our personalities are projecting maybe differently than we imagine they are. Yeah, well, please go ahead.
Totally agree with Jack, and I personally enjoyed talking and having conversation about music and sharing insight and that kind of things. And it was a different kind of fun, but I enjoyed.
We'll do more of it next set for sure. Yeah, what I've taken away in part from our work so far this last set is what you both Jack and Joshua are talking about is one of the most important things that we can do now, because frankly, adding just another element of simply assigning you work and having you do kind of more, you know, school work type of stuff, where, I mean, the recordings are important just for the reasons that that we just discussed with Anthony, but it's also important for us to kind of feel together as a group, to continue to experience each other, you know, as a community, and to think about music and artistry in ways that are more convenient now than they would be if we were, you know, working on 50 minutes of difficult music in person. So, point well taken. I want to just say one last word of thanks to the players for everything you did this quarter, for everything you were able to do with the recordings. Some of you made 10 improvs and, you know, turned in all of the rep. Some didn't quite finish everything. Regardless, I think we had a quarter to be proud of, and I'm grateful for all the work that you all put in. And I'm glad we got to have this time together. It was fun to see everyone's face. I hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday. I'm assuming you're finishing up school now, so enjoy the next few weeks off. And we'll look forward to getting together, I believe, in the second week of January as we get started again. I'll certainly be in touch before then with more info about the repertoire and sort of the plans so that you guys can have a sense of what's going to be happening. But for now, I just wish you a wonderful holiday. Enjoy the time with family, which maybe might be a little closer and more constant than usual, but we'll enjoy it. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, Jerry, I think I'm going to sign off, but thanks for your help putting this together.
I enjoyed the concert last night too.
Thank you. I'm so glad you could come. It was really fun, and the engagement was great, and I really appreciate you coming. I thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I see Catherine Nunnally was here, and Cordelia was here for a little while.
That was really cool to see. I'm so glad to see those guys.
Yeah, we had about 85 people at the peak, so.
Wonderful.
I think it came up well. Good job. Thank you all.
All right. Good night, Jerry.
Bye.